Wendy didn't waste a second reminding the court exactly why she was there. To speak the truth under oath about the threats, manipulation, and coordinated cover-ups she'd long accused Sean Diddy Combs of orchestrating. When I first started talking about Diddy, she began, her voice steady, I wasn't trying to destroy him. I was trying to wake people up. With that, she placed a thick stack of documents on the table. Printouts of old radio transcripts, emails from network executives, and a meticulous timeline of events outlining everything Diddy allegedly did to silence her. She took the jury back to the early 2000s, a time when, as she put it, he was untouchable. Everyone knew it. Mentioning Puff's name on air almost guaranteed a phone call within the hour. Wendy recounted how station managers would pull. Her aside, advertisers would mysteriously vanish and quiet but unmistakable threats would follow. You're doing too much, Wendy, they warned, but she kept talking anyway. They told me, you're going to get hurt, Wendy, she recalled, her voice unwavering. She described being chased, literally, out of her radio station by a girl group allegedly sent by Diddy himself. I said Total was broke, and within hours they were outside my building. That's not coincidence. That's coordination. Wendy painted her career like a battlefield. Every time she exposed something about Diddy, whether it was his infamous parties or how he treated his artists, something around her would suddenly collapse. A sponsor would vanish. A syndication deal would fall through. A network invitation would quietly disappear. But still, she stood firm. You can blackball me. You can threaten me. But you can't erase me. And now I'm under oath. So I hope they're listening. Because I'm not stopping until the truth is loud enough to break their machine. When the prosecution asked Wendy about the culture surrounding Diddy, she turned sharply toward someone she had long warned the public about, Jay-Z. Her tone grew colder. You can't talk about what Diddy did without talking about the people who stood next to him, smiling, co-signing. While the abuse was happening, that includes Jay-Z. She scanned the jury, then leaned forward. Y'all remember Foxy Brown? She was 15. Jay-Z was 27, and he was everywhere with her. Wendy pulled out lyrics from Foxy's debut album, songs Jay-Z reportedly wrote. Ain't no nump like the one I got. No one can knock me better, she read slowly. The courtroom shifted, visibly uncomfortable. You tell me, she said, pausing for effect. Why was a grown man writing those lyrics for a child? She went on to reveal industry-level details, rumors of Jay-Z picking Foxy up from her high school, spoiling her with expensive gifts, shopping trips, hair appointments, all allegedly funded by a man nearly twice her age. This wasn't mentorship. This was grooming. Then Wendy dropped something even darker, an alleged tape. There was a rumor, whispers for years about a tape. Jay-Z, Foxy, Jamie Foxx, and just like that, it disappeared. She paused. You know why? Because right after that rumor started, Foxy's home was burglarized. The tape? Gone. She let the silence sit. Coincidence? I think not. Wendy said she was fired from her top-rated radio show shortly after publicly questioning Jay-Z's relationships with underage girls. They called me toxic. But now? Now you're starting to see that everything I asked was worth asking. When the prosecution pressed her for evidence, Wendy didn't flinch. She nodded. Emails, call logs, producers who backed out of my show without warning. I've got receipts. I brought up Jay's name, Wendy told the court, and suddenly, quiet calls started going out. Calls from his team to industry insiders, warning them to blacklist anyone who even mentioned Foxy. She said the backlash was swift and calculated. They turned me into the villain, she continued, just for asking the kind of questions any decent person should have asked. Then she turned to the jury, locking eyes. You think I lost sponsors because I was messy? No. I lost sponsors because I was right, and they couldn't risk letting that truth spread. What came next? Wendy called the part no one wanted to believe, the part that had her branded a liar, a loudmouth, and worse. "I was the first to say it," she declared. "Those weren't parties, they were operations." She was referring to the now infamous freak-offs, a term central to the federal indictment against Sean Diddy Combs. Wendy testified that she first heard whispers about these gatherings in the late 90s, during the height of bad boys' dominance. Phones were taken at the door, guests signed NDAs. There were candle escorts, cameras, people assigned to specific rooms. This wasn't a house party, it was a ritual. She referenced an interview with Karen Superhead Steffens, who told Wendy on air that Diddy once invited her to one of these events and requested male involvement. Superhead didn't lie, Wendy said. She described it all, the paranoia, the drugs, the bizarre setups. She told me Diddy was terrified she'd expose him. Wendy leaned in, her voice low but clear. "I made sure people heard that interview. I played it again and again, because the truth was too heavy to ignore." She described similar accounts from other guests, both men and women, who had attended Diddy's parties and came back disturbed. They weren't just partying. They were told what to wear, who to touch, what room to enter. Wendy revealed that she personally spoke with 3 individuals who claimed IV bags were used afterward to help guests recover, just as detailed in the current indictment. "They told me there were medical assistants on standby," she said. "This wasn't socializing, it was organized depravity." She then handed over a list, coded with pseudonyms, of people who had shared their testimonies with her in private. The courtroom was stunned. One by one, their accounts mirrored the very patterns described by Cassie Ventura, Gina Huen, and other witnesses in the case. Finally, Wendy dropped one last chilling confirmation. "The baby oil," she said. "I mentioned it on air as a joke once, but it wasn't funny. They really found over 1,000 bottles, just like I said. You know how I knew? Because people told me, and I was the only one willing to say it." She leaned back in her chair, composed, and looked directly at Diddy. "All these years later, and we're finally here. Now, it's not gossip, it's evidence." As the courtroom fell into a deeper silence, Wendy Williams shifted her focus to someone she had defended for years, Cassie Ventura. "I said it back then," she declared, eyes locked on the jury. "Y'all were mesmerized by the diamonds, the music videos, the red carpets. But I saw a scared girl. I saw imbalance. And I said it on the air. Something about that relationship was off." Wendy testified that as early as 2008, she began warning her listeners about the obsessive control Diddy allegedly had over Cassie. She was 19. He was pushing 40. That's not love. That's leverage. She described how Diddy's empire, private jets, round-the-clock security, his grip on the industry, made it nearly impossible for Cassie to walk away. "I said it then, and I'll say it now. She didn't need a boyfriend. She needed a bodyguard." Wendy reminded the court of an old clip she aired, where Cassie looked down during an interview and visibly flinched when Diddy raised his voice. "People said she was just nervous. I said it was trauma, but nobody listened." The prosecution entered into evidence a timeline of Wendy's broadcasts, aligning with Cassie's legal claims. Wendy testified, "I was told he had access to her phones, that he'd show up to hotels without warning. That hotel staff were instructed to unlock her doors for him." She paused. "And when I said that out loud, my sponsors pulled the plug." She then referenced the 2018 incident, when Cassie reportedly ended the relationship after Diddy allegedly forced his way into her home. "That wasn't the first time. He showed up uninvited," Wendy said. "People don't understand. When a mogul wants control, they don't need permission. They make the world rearrange itself for them." With chilling clarity, she outlined how these powerful men operate: grooming, isolating, leveraging their influence, and using wealth as a leash disguised as love. "He didn't just love Cassie. He owned her." And when she finally broke that chain, she became a threat. Wendy ended this portion of her testimony with a piercing statement. Everything in that lawsuit, I saw the signs, I said it publicly, and now finally she's being heard. But at what cost? She adjusted her microphone again. Her voice didn't shake, but it slowed. You don't talk about men like Diddy and walk away clean. I knew that. I just didn't realize how deep it would go until it happened. She then testified that in 2004, during the height of her radio success, she received a chilling message from a record label executive. Stop talking about Puff or... Wendy didn't flinch. She kept going. The very next week, she said, I was pulled from my afternoon time slot. They didn't even pretend it wasn't about him. It was punishment. She revealed that she had heard from multiple insiders that Diddy had made strategic phone calls to label heads, promoters, radio networks, all with the same message: distance yourself from Wendy Williams. She recalled one program director who didn't sugarcoat it. You went too far. You poked the wrong bear. Wendy recounted being nearly attacked outside her own studio by the girl group Total, just days after she'd called them washed up and broke on air. And you think they just happened to show up? She asked. The court. No. They were sent. She painted the scene in vivid detail. Fans pressed against the glass of the radio station lobby, her boyfriend waiting in the car outside, her intern panicking inside. That wasn't just a confrontation, she said. That was a message. We can get to you. After that, the walls started closing in. She was disinvited from BET events, denied media passes, advertising deals vanished. It was all coordinated, Wendy testified. Diddy didn't just want to stop me. He wanted to erase me. She then produced printed emails from PR firms representing Bad Boy at the time, each one cutting ties with her platform. She read from one. Per client instruction, we will no longer be booking talent on the Wendy Williams show. Then she held up the paper for the jury to see. That client? She said. Sean Combs. I wasn't the first to be blackballed, she added, but I was one of the few who stayed loud about it. She turned to the jury, eyes unwavering. That's what he does. If you speak, you lose everything. Your mic, your money, your name. But I didn't fold. I talked through the silence. And here I am. Wendy paused, sat still, then reflected on a moment that in hindsight felt surreal. We came from a very homosexual era of hip-hop, she said, quoting her own controversial past remarks. That wasn't shade, that was truth. And for saying it, I was burned at the stake. She explained how in the early 2000s, there was a quiet but deliberate campaign to protect certain stars by shaming and silencing anyone who asked questions. I had Charlemagne on the air with me. And even back then, we knew what not to say if we wanted to stay employed. But I said it anyway. She referenced her 2004 book, The Wendy Williams Experience, filled with coded references and veiled warnings about Diddy, Jay-Z, and their after-dark lifestyles. People called it gossip, she said. But now, the government calls it evidence. Wendy then recounted a 2009 interview.